Foss Brothers Marine presents Countdown to the Walleye Opener with Steve Panaz.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show tonight. I have to admit, it was an incredible day today. I'm looking out right over my shoulder. I see the shore of a gorgeous lake, and I had a chance to spend some time on Mille Lacs today chasing crappies and really had a great fun time. But this was an important week for fishing in Minnesota this week. The MinFish group had a meeting over at the Capitol. It was attended by Governor Walz, Sarah Stroman, the DNR director, and Brad Parsons, and a number of the fishing team. But what was really cool to me is we had a chance to actually visit the St. Paul hatchery, and I got to show you this building. This building, or at least the hatchery, was opened in the late 1870s, and this building in particular is still 100 years old. And it really kind of needs to be replaced. But I want to show you what 18 million walleyes look like. This bank is all cutfoot Sioux walleye eggs, and there's 18 million of them in that bank of jars right there. And what other thing was cool? These are actually muskie fry from Lake Rebecca in Wright County. And if you zoom in on some of these things, you can see the egg sacs. These things are only a day or two old. And these are the muskies that are going to provide great fishing in Minnesota 10, 15 years down the road. And I think that's pretty awesome. So, hey, thanks for joining us tonight. Chad, I'd like you to come in if you can. We've got a great show tonight. We got Mark Kortz is coming on board. We're going to talk about walleye location. Brad Hawthorne's going to come in. We're going to talk specifically about opening on Mille Lacs Lake. He's a guide and has been a long-term guide on there. Corey Heiser, Berkeley Pro, is going to come on. We're going to talk about Prairie Lake walleyes for everybody that's fishing in the Northwest. And then we got Jeff Miller from Trax Tech. We're going to talk about advanced boat rigging, and Trax Tech has a number of products there. And then Adam Belke from Foster Brother Marine is going to come in, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to avoid issues with your trailer. And this morning, or actually this week, I had a flat tire in my trailer, and I got a funny story I'm going to share on that. So it's going to be pretty cool. But Chad, we've got some pretty fun things to give away tonight too. So what are some of the prizes?
Well, get your fingers limbered up, folks, and get on the comment board and join us if you can participate in the show tonight. Like and comment and share the show and so on. You're going to get on the list to win a couple of great prizes. One of them, the amazing Omnia Fishing Premium Pro membership, and that Premium Pro app is incredible. Depth contour maps, water temperature, bottom composition, all of these different maps. It's fantastic stuff. We're going to give away a $50 membership for that app, and then also some Berkeley Power Bait power switches. Now, we're going to talk about pitching some plastic shallow today, and that would be a great option right there. So some great prizes. All you got to do is get on the comment list. I'm going to keep track of everybody, and then we'll draw a couple of winners at the end.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun. Hey, I want to bring in our first guest in tonight, Mark Kortz, Skeeter Pro Mark Kortz. And I know, Mark, you look like you're in Wisconsin right now. I'm guessing you're probably over in north of Green Bay and south of Gills Rock and somewhere targeting smallmouth this week. Is that the case?
That is the game for the next 2 weeks, actually. We've got a couple tournaments here in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin that we're really looking forward to. The first one kicks off tomorrow, the Chad Adrian's Memorial Tournament, which is a Wisco tournament. And then we got the Sturgeon Bay Open next week. And then we head to the Mississippi River. So I'll be back in Minnesota just a week late for the opener. But, it's just a fun fishery to be here. And we enjoy our couple weeks here in Sturgeon Bay every year.
Every year I make the commitment to get over there and fish these events, and each year I break those commitments. But I know there were a number of 7-pound smallmouth put in the boat last week, and Adam Nye, I think, had some big fish too and won the tournament. But good luck over there. But I'm going to steal you for a little bit. I want to really talk about strategies for finding walleyes on opening weekend. It looks like the weather's going to be fantastic across Minnesota. And really, I want to take, what is your approach for looking for walleyes on opening day, and kind of take me through that process that you use?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is utilize my electronics, Steve. I mean, when we talk about electronics, the key is you're able to find fish, and our electronics are so good nowadays that you have to trust them. But I'm going to look in those shallow areas. When you're on sand and things like that, side imaging is a great tool to use when you're on sand flats and things like that. Always check river mouths and things like that. You're going to get some warmer water out of those shallow waters coming into the lake. It always brings nutrients and it brings a lot of bait there. But one of the key factors this season, with the water being a little bit warmer than it typically is that you're going to see a lot of the typical bait that walleyes eat this time of year up shallow spawning. So your spot tail shiners, your emerald shiners, which they spawn in the fall, but they're still in the shallow waters because that's going to be the warmest water that warms up right now. But you got perch, everything's going to be up there. So that's where I'm going to target those walleyes. And the cool thing about this year with the water being a little bit warmer is that those weeds are going to have a little chance to grow up. And that's another key area to find walleyes on this opening weekend in Minnesota.
So what are some of the depths that you're targeting? I mean, when I first started walleye fishing, it was always I'd go out to that 12, 15 foot, 18 foot and fish that mid depth. But I tell you what, the last few years, my May and Junes have been spent in a lot of water between, say, 3 and 8 feet of water. And it's really paid off really well for me. Are you running into the same thing yourself?
Absolutely. But I mean, it just depends on the lake you're on and how much pressure it's getting. Obviously, if you're on a big body of water, like the Big 5, Mille Lacs, Leech, Winnie, Cass, those types of lakes where you got a lot of pressure, those fish are going to leave those shallows real quick just because of the amount of pressure. But if you're starting at midnight, absolutely, I'm going to be up there dirt shallow as I can get because those walleyes are going to be up there. But as the day progresses, especially with the way the weather's looking and the water temperatures that we have right now, don't be afraid to slide out back to those traditional, 10 to 12, 13 foot of water. Because those fish don't like pressure. I mean, if you can stay away from boats, if you can find, some good cabbage, things like that, or some good grass coming up where you're away from boats, that's a key area that I look for. Even around lily pads. I mean, walleyes want to be in that warmer water, and sometimes you'll even find them in mud this time of year, back in those back bays, the same areas where you'd find those crappies spawning. A lot of times you're able to catch walleyes back in those types of bays. But right now I'm going to look for, that gravel, sand in that shallower water, especially if you can stay away from boats, dirt shallow. But yeah, if there's pressure, don't be afraid to slide out because those fish will slide out as the day progresses.
I was on the west side of Mille Lacs today. We were targeting some crappie and actually did fairly well on crappies, but we were running across back to the boat ramp at Garrison, and I got a phone call, so I pulled over, and I'm watching the sonar unit. I'm in 33 feet of water, and there were walleyes down on the Garmin, and I thought, what are they doing out this far? But it's one of those things where the majority of the time this shallow water stuff can go. And talk to me a little bit about your strategy when you're targeting shallow fish. Obviously, boat pressure and your own boat can spook fish. So how do you address those types of things?
A couple baits that I love this time of year. Number one, the Stunna. The Berkley Stunna is a great bait. It's a jerk bait. So the jerk baits really work good this time of year. And then the other thing I'm going to throw is either, I really like the gulp minnow this time of year. The gulp minnow is always good. You've got the original power bait minnow that works really good this time of year. The key is, especially when you're up shallow, is getting those baits away from the boat. One of the lines I really like to run this time of the year is Berkley XL in an 8-pound, and I'll long that behind the boat on a 1/8 ounce jig head with a minnow or a plastic and get it away from the boat and just snap it and keep that boat moving 0.4 to 0.6. And that's just a great technique. You can cover a lot of water and find those active pods. And once you find those active pods, you can slow down and just, spot lock or talon down and keep casting at them. And that's just a great technique this time of year.
It's interesting. During the Min Fish meeting this week, we talked with Brad Parsons, and it sounds like the minnow shortage is not as bad as it has been in years past. But last year, I was up in the Winnie area, and we ran into significant issues finding any type of shiners. We ended up with some fatheads, but we ended up almost fishing exclusively. And I'll show you the actual photo from the boat that day. We were throwing that That little
The
2.8
minnow is a good choice. And then the
Yes.
power swim. Yeah, the power swimmer, both great choices. The other good one, that we just released this year is the power switch. That's going to be a great bait up shallow. We've got some really good lifelike colors in that bait, in those natural colors, the perch, things like that. That works great this time of year. You're really just trying to have an erratic action and get that reaction bite from those fish. They're hungry. They just got done spawning. They're ready to put on the feed bag. The water temperatures are coming up. And with the water temperatures, me and you talked about it before we got on the show. You said the water temperatures were 56, 57. That's kind of, we were seeing some of those same water temperatures out here just because there was a few days we didn't have wind. But don't be afraid to pick up the speed a little bit. You're typically Minnesota openers 42 to 45 degree water, maybe 48. Now, if you got 56 degree water, don't be afraid. But if it gets slick, calm, there again, get those baits out behind the boat. Your boat's going to spook those fish in that shallow water, but they'll come right back into that same area once your boat goes by. But get those baits behind the boat and just snap it and create that erratic action.
So, Mark, you mentioned XL, which you mean Trilene XL, extra lamp,
XL, absolutely.
monofilament. So when are you fishing monofilament versus braid versus some of the different braided lines or the fluorocarbon?
What I really like, especially this time of year, Steve, I like Trilene XL, which is a monofilament, especially in that shallow water. It has a little bit of forgiveness. You're moving along pretty good and you're snapping that jig and it allows that fish to get that hook, but you have a little bit of shock. I tend to lose more fish if I'm using a braided line, like a fire line or things like that, with the way I'm fishing that bait. I want that bait to move, but I don't want it to move super aggressively, but I want to get it out behind the boat. And the cool thing about mono is it actually floats. So it's kind of keeping that jig, back there moving quite a bit.
Mark, let's talk a little bit about crankbait colors and crankbaits themselves. And one of the things and you mentioned jerk baits with the stunner, one of the things I look for when I hook a fish is which hook do I have that fish on? If I'm catching it on that back hook, they're nipping at the bait. If they're swallowing the bait or they got that front hook, it tells me they like what I'm doing. So it's either the color, the action, the lure itself, and that sort of thing. How do you use what you learn or what you see when you hook fish to make decisions on the water in terms of maybe tweaking your presentation?
Well, what I like to do, Steve, if we have multiple people in the boat, which you typically do on a Minnesota opener, it's a great time to be with the family and friends and spend time in the water. Put different baits on people's lines and see what the fish tell you. Pay attention to the small details. If somebody in the boat is catching more fish than another guy, it could be a color. It could be the way he's working the bait. There's a multiple of different, scenarios where that plays into effect. But just pay attention to what's going on and how the fish are reacting to the baits. Today with forward-facing sonar, you can see a lot of what's going on real simply by just paying attention to your electronics and watching what's happening. So just pay attention to your electronics. If you're not seeing fish in an area, don't be afraid to move. Maybe you caught them there last year. Well, the water temps were a little bit colder there last year. So search that area because they didn't go far. They typically don't move far this time of year because there's ample bait in those areas. So don't move far. Just check those areas and look for the active fish.
It's interesting, on a typical opener, the advice is find the warmest water you can in a system, but the water's already pretty warm across the state, and we had such an early ice out. I guess I'm not afraid to fish some of those mid-depth, clearer lakes for opener. If the bite's not going, sliding across the road or just down the road to another lake is not a bad strategy. And the other thing today, I was fishing crappie with my brother, and he points out I was started off with a small blue jig. I had 0 bites. He had 4 fish in the boat on pike. I made the switch, and that was the key to getting bit. So if you are out there with multiple guys, just everybody start out with something different, and the fish will tell you what they want. So,
well, Steve, that was the first mistake you made, is not putting pink on to begin with. Your favorite color for crappies this time of year.
I'm stubborn at times. so hey, we're going to let you go, Mark. Good luck this week in South Dakota. And I have been in the gym working out, getting ready for this next Lake Commandos battle with you. So we're we're going to head somewhere with big fish, and just know I'm going to be ready for you this year.
Hey, looking forward to it. And everybody enjoy the opener and have fun and be safe out on the water.
Thanks, Mark. We'll talk to you later. You know, what's interesting, Mark is one of these guys who's been fishing professionally for years. He's a bass angler. He's a walleye angler. And when you start combining someone that has those skill sets, they get to be very dangerous on the water. Hey, one of the best waters to open on, obviously, is Mille Lacs Lake. It's phenomenal. You know, this year we have a little challenge with it's going to be a catch and release fishing this year. But I was on Mille Lacs today. I saw fish. I actually spotted a smallmouth in about 2 feet of water coming out of one of the channels and looking for fish. But I want to bring in one of the best experts on the lake right now. Brad Hawthorne has been guiding on Mille Lacs for a number of years. And Brad, hey, it's good to see you. How you feeling on opener for this year? How's this coming together?
It's coming together beautiful. I've been out every couple of days, just out there high speed scanning and just seeing where the tarot cards are laying. And the fish are a little bit deeper, but it's like the only thing I've noticed different is it's going on 4 weeks. So I was out there 4 weeks ago and I saw biomass of walleyes spawning 4 weeks ago. So 3.5, 4 weeks ago, those fish were spawning. And I think what we have to look forward to on Mille Lacs is we're not going to have that. Steve, you've been out here where the spawn happens a week or two before opener and the fish are kind of in that funk. We're not going to have that this year. It's going to be lights out.
No. So I launched today out of the Garrison, public access, ran to some of the bays on, some of the channels fishing crappies today. But I saw fish as deep as 33, 30, 34 feet today, and I was actually stunned. So your comment about some of these deeper fish. So how if you were going to target Mille Lacs walleyes, and I know you're going to this week, how deep are you going to start, during the day? And what are some of the techniques that you're going to use?
So I'm going to start out with tungsten, quarter ounce tungsten jig and shiner. That's a Minnesota staple. I'm going to start there. My water temps on my graph today, I was reading 53 to 55 degrees, which, it was a little bit calmer today, but it did blow a little bit. If the lake lays down, that water temp's going to creep up 2 to 3 degrees in one day. But I'm going to be throwing that jig and shiner, and I'm going to start looking. Like today, I marked a lot of fish in that 14 to 18 foot range. But like you said, Steve, I went out to 24 to 30. There's a lot of fish out there too, and they're walleye. So I'm also going to have those leeches. And this year, do not forget the leeches and bobbers on opener, man. I'm telling you, because if those fish are starting to chew on bugs a little bit, which they might be because we have weeds popping up, we have we're about 2.5, 3 weeks ahead of time, I guess is the point. And right after opener on traditional years, 2 to 3 weeks is when you start to see those guys using leeches. A lot of times guys are using leeches on opener. So don't forget those leeches coming up.
It's amazing. I remember vividly many years ago, we were fishing out of Wellswood, my dad, my brother on Mille Lacs, and opening weekend was a dynamite leech bite, but we couldn't buy a fish on a leech that day. And we finally caught one around 10 a.m. and it spit out a shiner. Grab a jig, throw it out there, went about 3 feet, and I got thumped. And we ended up going in and buying bait and coming back out and just having a banner day. So it's one of those things where if you're not bringing them with you, you just don't know if they're going to work or not. So it's a good thing to check out. Hey, what side of the lake would you recommend anglers open on in terms of, and what kind of structure would you look for?
So right now they're not too far off where they spawn. So that whole north end from Agate Bay all the way over to Pikes Point, that's pretty much loaded. It's loaded every year. It's no secret. But just drive around there, high speed scan until you mark pods of fish, and vary your jig size to how deep they are and start throwing at them. If they don't go on the jig and minnow, switch over to that leech or bobber and leech. But man, it's the size of the schools that I was seeing the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
they're huge.
Really,
it's not the post spawn, 15, 5 to 15 packs. I mean, I'm seeing mega schools out there right now.
Really? And you're saying that 12 to 18 feet of water seems to be the key.
Yep. And if you get when the sun really gets bright, you'll notice they'll start hugging that 18 to 20 a little bit more. They'll slip out a little bit deeper. But still, with that being said, there's a lot of fish that are not coming out of that 16 foot of water. They're just holding there for whatever reason. So some of the fish are moving out. Some of them are staying shallower.
So, Brad, I know the DNR limited the harvest on Mille Lacs this year. And in talking to Brad Parsons and the group, we actually met with them. They were talking about, they think that the fishing is going to be exceptional in Mille Lacs this year. And they were worried that there was going to be so many fish caught that they had to limit something into August because they just think it's going to be too good. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to mirror that statement. The problem with Mille Lacs is whenever we go into, a later keep range, people assume that there's no fish in the lake, and it's the opposite. It's that there's so many fish in here that they've chewed down the bait. And the DNR, I applaud them actually. There's a lot of people that don't, but I'm on the DNR side because what they're doing is saying, hey, you can keep fish during that hooking mortality.
August time frame. Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of us trying to release those fish that might not make it, now we're able to keep those fish, which makes a lot more sense to me. And the other part, this is the Twin Cities playground. You can come up here and catch 30, 40, 50 fish, walleyes a day, an hour and a half from the Twin Cities. This is the only place you can do that right now. And that's part of the reason why they clamp down a lot, because this lake in a week can go from having 2,000 people on it to 20,000 people. So that's why they clamp it down. It's not that there's no fish here, but to reiterate the DNR, it's going to be a barn burner for probably a couple months out here.
Yeah, they were showing statistics that the juvenile perch population is very low. And so there's going to be a lot of hungry fish out there this year. And I do think it's going to be a phenomenal year. So I've been on the lake several times where you go out there and just have a ball on catching fish. And to me, keeping fish is important at times, but I'll give up eating fish for great fishing as well. So, hey, let's talk a little bit about June. As we slide into June, what are your favorite techniques? And if you have any tips for anybody that's starting out?
So June's a wonderful time to fish up here in Mille Lacs. Absolutely. The weather's usually nice. The wind usually lays down. Fishing tips on June, get out there. If you had to put it in a box, look from about 18 feet to about 30. And somewhere in there is where you're going to find fish. June is awesome. You're going to find fish in the deeper sand, the deeper rock. They're going to be everywhere. Deeper transition, and of course, the mud flats. If you had to pick one place to go in June, go to the mud, because when the bugs start popping in June, the walleyes are going to be right there. Sometimes they're there, like this year, they're already out there waiting for it. So that would be my tip. Go out to the mud, grab your leeches, grab your bobbers, grab your rigs, and go out there and set the hook a few times.
So, Brad, if somebody wanted to target a trophy walleye on Mille Lacs, and the trophies, we mean 27, 28, 29 inches, what is your favorite way to target big fish on Mille Lacs?
So, two-part answer to that. Rocks, deeper rocks, bobber, and just identifying those larger fish on forward-facing sonar and pitching on them and staying on those fish. The other one, which has kind of fallen out of favor the last couple of years, if I'm looking for a big pig walleye, I'm trolling big stick baits over the basin, and it's a tried and true method. There's been hundreds of thousands of dollars won on this lake trolling big stick baits over 32 feet of water.
Hey, if somebody wants to book a trip with you or get a hold of you, how do they do that?
You can hit me on any of the socials at Hawthorne's Guide Service, or you can get old-fashioned and send me a call or a text at 651-271-8600.
That's awesome. Hey, Brad, good to see you again. One of these days, I'm actually going to get in the boat or on the ice with you, but I sure appreciate your time tonight, and good luck on opener.
Yep, have a happy opener, Steve. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll talk later. I have to admit, I spent the day rigging tackle this morning, getting rods ready, and I'm really getting excited about throwing some baits this year. I'm actually going to open on Winnie this year. So if you see a big black blue skeeter, stop over and say hi, because we're going to be having a ball. Hey, one of one of my favorite fishing partners is a young man by the name of Corey Heiser. Unfortunately, Corey lives in Fargo, so he's from North Dakota, but he is a passionate Minnesota angler. He's got some, he spends, hey, Corey, how are you? He spends a lot of time on the prairie lakes up around in Otter Tail County and things. And I wanted to bring him on because Otter Tail County and these prairie lakes can be absolutely phenomenal, especially on opener. And Corey, talk to me a little bit about your strategies and I'm in terms of opening weekend on some of these shallower prairie lakes, and take us through kind of your approach to these waters.
Well, one of the first things is I do like smaller bodies of water, maybe shallow opportunities. And it's funny when you fish these shallower bodies of water, I actually like to go extremely shallow. And if you've got emerging weeds, there's some awesome places that have emerging weed growth. Maybe there's some cattail edges that are going to have a lot of bait fish and a lot of warm water. And those are going to be the first places to look, especially if you got like creeks running in where the walleyes have spawned and now they're kind of heading back. Especially this year, we're going to have a lot of walleyes back from spawn, I believe, with the warmer water temps. So I like to get out a jig and start throwing some Berkeley plastics for sure.
So I got to show a photo right now. This is a prairie lake walleye. I think that was a 28 incher. Talk a little bit about, when you talk plastics, Corey, talk about what are some of the baits you're actually talking about and how big are these actual baits?
Well, early in the season, I like to use, like, Berkeley's got, it's called a bonefish. It's a paddle tail bait, really limber. They've got a 2.5 and 3.5 inch size. I like both of those. The curly bones is a very, very similar shaped bait, but it's got a curly tail instead of a paddle tail. Those are two baits I go to. And then a bait that was actually kind of, I guess, got its notoriety was on the Mississippi River, but is a ribworm. And I absolutely love to throw ribworm early in the season. I feel like in the colder water, the walleyes just aren't sometimes as aggressive to chase those paddle tails. So I love like a ribworm where you can literally set it on the bottom, and as the wave action or the water moves, it'll flick that tail around and you can get a lot of bites with that bait literally laying on the bottom.
So are you exclusively soft plastics in the spring? When do you go with live bait on some of the prairie lakes?
I mean, let's face it, like live bait always works. And if I'm going to Minnesota, and you'd be a fool not to try and have some shiners, but first and foremost, if I can get them on plastics, I'm always going to fish plastics first. But a shiner is always going to work, especially this time of year. And I've listened to some of the other guys. I mean, we are quite a bit earlier this year. I mean, last year, the ice had literally went off like 3 days ago. And now we're looking at ice out conditions like 6 weeks ago. So instinctively, the water is going to be warmer. And I do feel like we're going to get on a leech bite a lot sooner this year. And as you know, I like to fish big paddle tails, especially around weeds. And that's going to happen a lot sooner this year. So I'm not afraid of literally any plastics. Now, one thing that I haven't even talked about is the Berkeley Gulp, like the 4-inch minnow. I love that bait, especially in cold water. The scent disperses off the gulp a lot better in cold water. So you'll get a lot of walleyes chasing some of that heavily scented stuff, especially early in the season.
Talk a little bit about fish location. I know a lot of the prairie lakes that you and I have fished together. I mean, we're targeting fish in 2, 3, 4 feet of water. We're in the grass. We're in the wood. And that's where we're finding, it seems like the shallower we catch them, the bigger they get. And we're talking 25, 26, 27, 28 inch walleyes. Why do you think those big fish are up that shallow? And why do you think more anglers aren't targeting those fish?
Well, I think first is anglers are scared to get too shallow. Number one, your electronics become a little less valuable as far as you're unable to drive over them and see them. So the first thing is you got to be confident that there's walleyes up shallow. But it's just a matter of there's bugs hanging off some of these trees that we fished around. There's a lot of emerging, like, just stuff in the water. And then that attracts the bait fish. And anywhere there's bugs and bait fish, you're going to find big walleyes. So it is an aggressive approach. I can distinctively remember last year when we filmed, We were on the calm side fishing in super shallow water, and that's where all the biggest walleyes were. And I feel like that happens a lot, especially early in the season when the water warms up quicker in that shallow water, and the fish are just up there and they're eating and they're aggressive. And I guess I always say I'm not that good of a fisherman, so I want to go where they're the hungriest and they're the most aggressive.
So I know when you talk paddle tails, I'm a fan of that Berkeley, that Champ swimmer and a 4.6 or a 3.8. I know you're a fan of the hollow belly, which is I believe a 4-inch bait. Talk a little bit about your approach for rigging that bait and how do you fish it when you're in that water that may be 2 to 5, 6 feet of water.
Well, I think both of those baits are phenomenal, and actually, I think I like the 5-inch on both. So, like the hollow belly has both a 4-inch and a 5-inch, and then the Champ swimmer is the 3.6 and the 4 or the 3.8 and the 4.6. Both super awesome baits when you're looking for aggressive fish and big fish. Usually, I'm rigging them with a 1/2 ounce to 3/4 ounce swim bait jig head. You want to have a big hook. These are big baits, so you don't want to, be using small tackle. I'm not afraid to use 15-pound main line with a 15-pound fluorocarbon. And there are a couple different ways to present those baits. You can literally slow roll them where you bomb them into shallow water and just have a slow retrieve, put in a few stops in there. You can also swim the bait where maybe you're kind of lifting it up and then give it some slack line so the bait will sink down to the bottom and then raise it up again. And then, as John Hoyer's made famous, you can snap that bait, especially when the fish are on the chow. You can literally cast that out and snap it almost like you're setting the hook, let that bait fly up, and then kind of flutter down. And it's amazing how aggressive those bites from walleyes can be.
Yeah, I agree. There's times when you got that bait that's as big and you can't even see it in their mouth. Talk to me a little bit about when do you go from live bait or plastics to some of the crankbaits, some of like flicker shads or some of those baits that you're running up into that 3 to 5, 6 feet of water over weeds. What are some, when do you go to crankbaits?
Well, I think one characteristic, I'll go to a crankbait if it's super windy and you want to fish the windy side of the lake. A crankbait is just a lot easier to fish because the bait itself controls the depth. So you're able to kind of manipulate it with the crankbait that you choose. The other thing is if you need to like cover some water more quickly and you can move the boat along, if the fish are spread out, then a crankbait can be a good choice. But if I get calm conditions, I like to throw plastic. I mean, I've really kind of separated myself over the last 10 years by using a lot of plastics. So I'd rather pitch plastics than live bait. Live bait always has a place. It's always going to catch fish. But to be able to catch multiple fish on the same bait, to be able to fish a lot more aggressively, I just feel like I'm always going to start with plastics. And Berkeley does such a great job with both the gulp and the power bait that I always go start there. And then if I have to, I'll work into live bait.
We got a question right here on, what size plastics are you using? And I'm a fan of power worms. A 7-inch power worm on a jig head on weed lines can be dynamite for walleyes, even late into the summer. But I'm finding myself throwing bigger and bigger baits. I mean, there was never a time I ever thought I would throw. You mentioned a 3/4 ounce jig head, 15-pound test. I at one point in my fishing career, I would have thought there was never a chance to catch a walleye. But the more you fish these baits and the more you fish them in locations where other walleye fishermen aren't fishing them, you'd be amazed at how many big fish eat big baits. And it's not just huge fish, but those 20s, the 18 to 20 to 23, they will eat a 4.5, 5-inch piece of plastic. And I know you've had the same experience.
Well, and you think about it, like they're eating perch all the time that are up to 7, 8, 9 inches long. So it's this piece of plastic that you're using that's 4 or 5 inches long is still smaller than a lot of the baits that they're going to eat. So I don't get too intimidated about the size. The one thing that's nice about those big presentations is you can fish them a lot faster and you can change your cadences up because you're going to get a quicker fall rate. The one thing about fishing small stuff, is if you're not careful and their jig head size isn't matched up right, it's actually a tougher challenge to fish around the weeds. It's a tougher balance to make between having it sink too fast or not have it sink fast enough. So I love big baits. In fact, I don't hardly ever throw a bait under 3.5 inches long anymore.
Is that right? You make a good point. I mean, if you wonder about what to use, I think the biggest problem with soft plastics is a lot of guys use the jig heads are too small. The hook isn't big enough to leave enough hook gap for things. And two, I really think that you've got to look at that bait and say the head has to control the tail. And so if you have any questions about it, oversize your head. A 1/2 ounce is not too big on some of these larger baits, and a 3/4 is probably a better choice in a lot of those situations. So it'll be fun. Hey, I've got to let you go. I'm actually running over here, but look forward to getting in a boat with you in a few weeks. I heard today my boat's going to be back next week, and I'm ready to get rigged. I'm ready to get on the water and look forward to getting out with you. So
yep, absolutely, Steve. Good luck to everyone on the opener.
Yeah. Hey, Corey Heiser, follow him on the Walleye Tour going forward. I know you've got an event coming up in Red Wing here, not too far. So good luck on that. I'll touch base with you when we get back. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's been interesting on the last couple of Lake Commando shoots with Corey. We've had a number of giant fish on soft plastics on these prairie lakes. Don't be afraid of these 3, 4, 5-inch baits. Throw them. You'll be surprised, especially when we get into the later May and early June, you're going to find some big fish. Hey, one of the keys on walleye fishing is making sure you get your boat rigged properly. I've got Jeff Miller with Trax Tech out of Michigan, and they make some really awesome products. And I wanted to talk. Hey, Jeff, how are you tonight?
Hey, good, Steve. How about yourself?
I'm fired up for opener, man. I know. Do you guys have opening weekend in Michigan? I know here in Minnesota, it's like everybody leaves the cities and heads to the water.
Yeah, ours is a little different. Ours is pretty much open year round. So we've only got one small closure in the I think it's the Saginaw River, but it's for a very short period of time, just during spawning, and then it's right back on it. So we got Saginaw Bay here, Lake Erie. All of our rivers are open. So this year the fishing was just phenomenal all winter long, basically, because we had no ice, right? So everything was just fantastic. Guys were able to be in their boats almost all winter long this year. So really cool.
I know Foster Brothers is one of the dealers that carries Trax Tech. You guys have really made a science out of building high performance gear. Can you kind of take us through? Number one, you guys you're using your track technology versus some of the railings. What's the difference primarily between the railing system and what you guys are offering?
Yeah, Steve. So, our track basically just allows us to have a lot of different variations and options in our mounting platform. So we can take our track and we bolt it right directly to the gunnel wall of the boat, or we have a dual-sided track called our trolling bar. We have a lot of guys that we need to raise it up a little bit and get that down the sides of the gunnel walls. So we have that as an option. And then our track is basically able to be having our rail clamp mounting options underneath that. And they can go onto a round rail, say on the side of a Ranger, some of our skeeters that still have rails on them, a few of those boats. We've had some of our boats that I'm dealing with a lot of guys out west right now in the heavy gauge aluminum series, and those guys have rails all around their whole boat. So they're really putting basically a track with our rail clamps underneath it, because they really have never seen the versatility of what a track system has to offer. So I did a trade show out there this January with them, and boy, we've been out in the West Coast, mostly Washington, Oregon, Alaska, Idaho, stuff like that. But that's a lot of the interior coastal fishing. And now some of these guys out on the Pacific are starting to use our products and see those benefits of the track mounting options right in sport track models on all the Lund boats, on the trackers. The Polar Crafts have them, War Eagles. There's a lot of brand boats out now that the manufacturers are putting a little track system built in there. And we've got a T-bolt bracket that basically bolts to the bottom of our clamp or our track. And that allows that modular track system that we make to go right into any of the other boats. little track system that they offer, or like we said, the rail clamping options, or Alumacraft has their own and we make a clamp for that. So the track just really gives you a lot of versatility, a lot of strength that we can run any rod holders, downriggers, vertical trees, really help your boat enhance the presentation of what you want to give to it. And that's what we've tried. We've been in business 28 years now, Steve, and that's what we really, really strive for, is trying to help everybody understand you want your boat to fish the way you want to fish it. Don't just screw 3 or 4 rod holders down the side of it and let the boat dictate to you how you have to fish. So by having the track, if something's not working, I can loosen the thumb screws and slide it back or slide it forward. It just gives you that little bit of versatility, you know?
So I know a lot of walleye guys, especially in the Great Lakes, but a lot of the inland lakes like to troll. They like to troll boards with multiple rods in states like Wisconsin and Michigan, where you can run multiple rods per person. And one of the things that is a product you guys offer that I really think is amazing is the rod holders that allow you to run your boards. Talk to me a little bit about this product itself.
Yeah, so our vertical tree right here, we make this in a 2-unit, a 3-unit, a 4-unit tree. Boy, we've had it out. I started off with one that did not adjust and it didn't work well. You had to have different rod holders on it to really get a good presentation and not get rod tangles by different length rods. So by going to each individual rod holder on there, being adjustable up and down, we were able to fan our rod tips out more. Our base, we actually machine out of solid aluminum, has a pin and a spring in the bottom there, Steve. So we're able to lift it up and rotate the whole thing. So if we're fishing walleyes on there, most time we're straight out to the side like that. We're fishing a salmon spread on there. We can pick it up out of one set of teeth and turn it back. So it's easier actually to get the rod out of the holder and take some of the stress off there. So this photo right here is our typical setup in a 3 or 4 rod tree. Fishing, that's our salmon, our walleye setup, some dipsy divers or jet divers running low when we're trolling in that scenario. We can change this setup up very fast and go to about anything we want to. So my salmon guys, my walleye anglers, everybody that we're fishing combination, that's it. That's how easy it is to go for, and it's that strong a product that we can go from one species to the next, or we can switch it up and go a complete steelhead program. That's why we run a 4-unit tree in that picture like you saw. We can run a 4-unit vertical tree, change it all up, and maybe our copper rods come out and we go to 4 different length lead cores out there, and now we're running our lead cores out there, just inline boards out to the side. We're running some orange spoons and we're trolling at 3 miles an hour with a slide diver. So it really allows that one boat setup to have so much different adjustability, basically, you know.
Before we move on to planer board mass and stuff like that, talk to me a little bit about what an angler should look for in a rod holder that's versatile. So maybe if they're fishing walleyes this week and maybe they do want to run over to Michigan and fish salmon, or they want to rig boards, in troll Mille Lacs Basin, like Brad Hawthorne was just mentioning. Talk to me a little bit about what they should look for in a rod holder. And here's a couple of your models right here.
Yeah, that's our GTLT. That's a lift and turn ratcheting rod holder. Really what we ask people to look for and what they're trying to accomplish is if they are going to, a lot of guys, hey, I'm primarily a walleye angler, especially like here in all our Great Lakes, but at the same time, they want to run over to Lake Michigan and salmon fish a little bit, a few times a year. Most important part is make sure you get an aluminum rod holder. We have lots of guys call us all the time. Hey, I had some plastic ones on the boat. I fished them for a while. They held up. And all of a sudden I went and caught a 6-pound walleye and it broke on me. Well, plastic, stress, and fatigue over time, just the nature of the business. I built some. Didn't like them. I'm not a plastics guy. We're aluminum, stainless. We make things out of metal because it holds up and lasts forever. So you want to pick and choose what's going to work the best. In the tube style rod holders, when you look at a boat, that's always been my go-to rod holder because it's up on top of the wall, Steve, right? It keeps the butt of the rods out of your boat, especially when we're dealing with everybody that's got 17, 18, 19, 20-foot boats. I had a client here Saturday last week. Longtime guy, had a big boat downsized to him and his son just have a little 16-foot tracker now. and they literally have a 4-unit tree, a Dipsy diver holder on there, and he came to get 2 more 18-inch tracks from me because they bought a couple of manual downriggers on there, and they were able to run this on a 16-foot boat with just 2-3 guys fishing. And he said it's just amazing how you can make a small boat fish like a big boat like you used to have, just with the versatility of what the tree does or the individual rod holders, the tubes. He doesn't lose any space inside of his boat. He's able to have access to all his hatches and doors. That's the main thing. We did come up with a new cradle I've worked on the last couple of years because a lot of guys are big cradle fans. Mostly what we see in that is the tournament anglers. They're only allowed to run 6 rods on a per boat, no matter they're 2 guys on the boat. So they want to be able to stand right in the center of the boat, have them cradles tilted in toward them or good access at 3 different level heights. So we have a dual pivoting adjustable cradle out now. And that is really an incredible setup. I like the cradles either in the very back of the boat when we're in a big trolling situation, or I'll put them up in the nose of the boat. I like to just go and relax. So if I take my guys from the shop and we go fishing, they can fish out of the back because I've done it for my whole life. And I'll go sit in the nose of the boat and just tilt a couple cradles in there, and I'll run a couple 3-ounce bottom bouncers like right up in the front, or I'll run a tight body bait right to the nose of the boat. Yeah. And a lot of our guys that we've helped set up that way have said, wow, Jeff, I've come back and I've caught some of my biggest, best fish, out of the nose of the boat, because sometimes those baits are going through that school of fish first, and they never thought to fish out of the nose of their boat in a trolling application.
I want to move. You've been in this for 28 years. Talk to me about what has changed in electronics. And I mean, obviously, we went from these small little screens to these 12, 14, even 16-inch sizes on some of them. So, talk to me about the mount systems that you're recommending for some of these big, say, 12-inch type screens, because you learn quickly that if you don't have a solid base and a well-built base, it's just not going to work. You're going to end up buying something else.
Right. No, you're 100% right, Steve. I mean, all of our dealers and individual clients for quite a few years, kept asking us to make a really good electronics mount, something that wasn't going to move. And our rod holder, our RH1, has these teeth in it. We actually originally made everybody an electronics mount. They wanted it quick and easy, no tools on the boat. So we made basically that same looking rod holder, but instead of the teeth, we had a stainless plunger in the side of it. And it worked great for all the dash mounts. Still had a little bit of play because no matter how tight our tolerances are, you still got a little bit of movement between a hole going in there. Where on our teeth, we can machine and really hold our tolerances tight. There's a hub in there. So I just did one for a guy that came in here the other day, had a 19-inch Humminbird. This thing is monstrous. It's the largest one I've seen so far. It looks like he's putting a TV screen on his dash. It took his whole entire dash. And everybody asks us to make a better one. And like you said, that's been, as all these graphs continue to grow larger and larger out there that guys are putting on, they've got to have something solid. And so we've got our electronics mount, 3 different heights, and that single pivot, that's our double pivot right there in the view. So we've got pivot joints at the bottom, the top. You just pull it out to the side, real heavy spring loaded. It adjusts into the tooth location. The bottom and the top both adjust left to right also. So what we found on that, especially on our dashboards, depending on your boat, if we've got to get back in by the windshield and come out up to you so that your knuckles aren't hitting it when you're driving, can stay out of the bubble of a boat right there. That type of setup on electronics really helps out. And then the other part of electronics that guys really like is we'll take a little piece of track on our tall 12-inch electronics mount, put it up in the nose of the boat, Steve, and we'll put another 6-inch track in the back, like right in front of the outboard motor, kind of a dead spot on there, I call it. And that way, if they are jigging the river, up casting in the nose of the boat, when they're not casting and they're trolling, they can literally unplug it, take it out of there, walk it to the back of the boat, slide it in front of their outboard motor, and then they drop it in. And now when we're trolling, we've actually got a nice graph as a screen right in the back end. That's been a huge deal. And with all machined aluminum, the teeth in there, these things aren't falling down on anybody. They're not coming off. You set it in one place, get it locked where you want it, and that's it. It stays locked into place, and you're done. So it's just that market. Like I said, they just keep getting bigger and bigger screens, and the live scope systems and the Humminbird 360s. All those are really cool because they're portable. On a lot of these ice packs, or if the guy's putting the black box under the dash and running a cord to the front and the back, then they can do what I just did. Said is they'll take our transducer pole and move it from the front of the boat to the back of the boat, depending on their application. So that electronics world is just continually growing and growing. It's really, really an incredible thing. And the way it helps everybody fish, it's a game changer.
Your passion for fishing, your passion for your products is very, it's very cool. I have a question for you. So if someone is not in the area to go shop over at Foster Brother Marine in Delano, how do they get a hold of you? What's the best way to learn more about your products?
Yep, they can jump right on our website at traxtech.com. We've got a YouTube channel, tons of videos I've done for all the years, installing all the different makes and model boats. They can watch me install on fiberglass boats that we have no access to the bottom side, heavy gauge boats, building arches for them. Everything's on the website, or we've got a whole array of dealers around the whole entire country. So we've got stuff all over. So easy access for people to find if they still have a specific question. We've got a whole team of people in there. They can call, leave a message with them. They'll send them to my desk. I'm not here very often. I love manufacturing and working on stuff in the shop with their guys and developing new products all the time. But they can definitely call us, Steve, and we'll be happy to call them back and get with them for sure. Help them out. That's like I said, I love it. I love fishing, done it my whole life, and designing and building and manufacturing. It's a passion of mine forever. So I just love it.
Hey, I appreciate your time tonight. Thanks for joining us. If you guys are looking for boat rigging products that will meet or exceed your expectations, check out Trax Tech. And if you're in the Delano area, stop by Foster Brothers. You can see all the products in person. Hey, Jeff, thanks. Appreciate you coming on tonight, and hope to see you again.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Steve. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
We'll talk later. Hey, one of the things I wanted to talk about with Adam Belke tonight is that trailer maintenance and things like that. I got a funny story for you. This week, I took the boat out. We taped an episode of Lake Commandos, and it's sitting on the street in front of my buddy's house because I'm in from Montana. And a neighbor stops by and says, "Hey, you got a flat on your tire." And I thought, well, what's going on? I didn't hit anything. I didn't hear any hissing and everything. And actually found out that the cap on the boat was there. Something fell in there, and it was popped it out. But hey, I want to bring Chad back in. Chad, I know you've spent a lot of time on the road. I put thousands of miles on trailering, and fortunately, I haven't had any real major issues over the years. I've had back in the day, we've had issues. But one of the things I highly recommend, guys, before you take off for opener, most of you are going to leave tomorrow and head wherever you're heading, take a few minutes to walk around your trailer. In fact, Yamaha, go to YamahaOutboards.com under Maintenance Matter. They actually have a checklist that you can use to really make sure that your boat is ready and your trailer is ready to go on the road. But one of the things before I leave on every trip, and I don't let anybody do this but me, is we'll check, start at the front of the boat. I'll make sure that the hitch is right, that I've got the safety strap on, that the boat's tight to the trailer so it's not going to bounce back there. The hitch is correct. The power is hooked up. The lights are working. And then I'll walk from there around. I'll check the tires, make sure that I've got no leaks or nothing's low. I'll go to the back of the boat and make sure that I got my transom. I got the motor trimmed up enough. I got my sticks in there so I'm not putting pressure on the transom. I make sure my straps are on. How many have you've left and you don't have your straps on? Then I'll walk around the other side, check out those tires. It takes 2-3 minutes, but once you get used to doing it, it'll avoid a lot of issues on the road, and it's pretty simple to do. Hey, we had one other question. Chad, I know you're a fan of shallow water walleyes.
Love it.
Joe Anderson had a question on talk about shallow spring walleyes. You know, all I can say is believe that they're shallow, fish with long casts, and is that your dog? It's not mine.
That's mine. I apologize. Yeah, I think my wife is home. So
that's fun. But all I can say is start shallow. And if you're not catching fish, the shallow fish are going to be the aggressive fish. And as you move out deeper, all I can say, guys, is I'm excited for the opener. I think it's going to be a dynamite year this year.
Yeah.
And I know, Chad, you've had some really good openers in the past,
Yeah.
fishing shallow water, and we'll see what happens. But
Well,
hey,
I think.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Steve, you hit it on the head, and that is have confidence that those fish are in that water and make those long casts. It took me a long time to learn that because I grew up as a Lindy rig kid from a Lindy rig dad, right? And that's how you catch walleyes. But until I made myself fish and know that those fish are shallow, that was when I started catching them. And then once you start catching them, then it becomes a lot easier. So shallow fish are great.
Hey, I want to show you. This is a very typical shallow water walleye bite right here. That was a fish that ate a plastic last year on opener. Yep. Hey, Chad, we got some prizes to give away tonight.
We do.
So if you got some winners, let's give away that Omnia Premium Pro app first.
The Omnia Premium Pro, I do. I've been keeping track of all of our likes and comments tonight, and I just grabbed a couple of winners out of the hat. The Omnia Premium Pro membership goes to Shantae Lynn Reed. So Shantae Lynn Reed. So congratulations, Shantae. And then awesome. the Power Switch package to Ben Klein came out of the hat. Ben Klein. So those are your winners for tonight. Yeah. That's
awesome. Hey, both congratulations to both winners tonight. Just private message me with your email address and your shipping address, and we'll make sure that we take care of both of you this coming week. Hey, I want to thank Mark Kortz for coming on the last 4 weeks. He's a busy guy on the road a lot, but what a fishing talent, what an amazing angler. And to have Brad Hawthorne and Corey Heiser on today and Jeff Miller from Trax Tech. So really want to thank everybody. We're done with the series. We wanted to run 4 weeks just ahead of opener, but we've had so much fun the last few weeks. I think, Chad, we're going to do this again next year, but I think we're going to start a little earlier because I think
so.
I think everybody's out fishing right now.
Right.
Well, I think we're going to look at something in March, but I sure appreciate everybody tuning in, and thank you. And I'd like to thank Mark Foster and the guys and the crew over at Foster Brother Marine. If you're looking for a boat, you're looking for products, stop by Foster Brothers, check out what they've got. I worked with Mark several years ago at North American Media Group, and he's a good dude, and they got great products. So, and Chad, thank you for your time the last 4 weeks. You've made the show. You made the show work. So thank you.
Yep, you bet, Steve. Love it.
All right, everybody, share your pictures. Big walleyes this weekend. We'll talk later. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.